Greetings, I'm Lisa Frost, and I'm up this week for our midweek devotional at University United Methodist Church in Baton Rouge. Been asking myself what might be helpful or needed this week. My dear friend John Fletcher spoke in this space last week about the worry and, yes, the anger that has come from seeing this fourth surge of COVID. My thoughts are there today, too. If you haven't watched that, please go to the YouTube presentation for John's honest and loving words inspired by his sister's sermon. I do highly recommend it. We are still living in the dark and the light of this pandemic world. Both exist at the same time. I can feel overwhelmed by the news of the world and joyful about the birth of my new grandchild. I can be angry at that our hospitals are overwhelmed and children are being put at risk, and grateful that scientists and healthcare workers are staying the course to protect our communities. Henry Nouwen said it this way in his book, The Prodigal Son, about light and dark. This is a quote that he wrote. People who have come to know the joy of God do not deny the darkness, but they choose not to live in it. They claim that the light that shines in the darkness can be trusted more than the darkness itself, and that a little bit of light can dispel a lot of darkness. They point each other to the flashes of light here and there and remind each other that they reveal the hidden but real presence of God. I love that phrase, the flashes of light, especially as I have lightning and thunder outside my window right now. I've started back with my practice as a spiritual director the past week after 6 weeks away for rest and family. And I wanted to say a few words about this as a way of seeing both the light and the dark, joy and suffering. Spiritual directors are people trained in listening to another. We don't fix problems. It's not therapy and it's not pastoral counseling. It's a time set aside for discerning the movement of God in our lives. We are companions that sit with the questions of others. People sometimes bring theological challenges, struggles with scripture, but most often we talk about the everyday of life, as Brother Lawrence would have said, how we practice the presence of God. A spiritual director, and I have a little resistance to that word director, but tradition hasn't come up with a better one. But a spiritual director sets aside time and space with individuals or groups for reflection and inner work, and helps the others see for themselves the flashes of light that reveal the real presence of God. The theme of dark and light is plentiful in the Bible. Jesus says, I am the light. And in the first chapter of Genesis, God says, let there be light. And in this passage from the Gospel of John, the Word gave life to everything that was created, and His life brought light to everyone. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. This past week, I was in conversation and direction with a young woman who had just gotten news of a life change that was unexpected and disappointing. Carefully made plans were scrapped in an instant beyond her control, and it was hard to see what was next. And where was God in all of this? At the end of our time together, I suggested she might just try to write a note to herself from God. Maybe one so small it could go on a Post-it note. And later that evening, she sent this to me and has given me permission to share it with you. Her note from God. Dear one, I know you're waiting. Keep your heart open and soft. Love, God. P.S. People have put my name on everything, but it will only stick to love. I've been so inspired by these simple and loving words this week. I hope the flash of light inspires you too. You might consider this question for yourself. What might God write to you that meets you where you are? I would love to hear what your note says. There are people trained in spiritual direction and available to you. One of the things we've learned during this time of being socially distanced is that Zoom and FaceTime work pretty well for this. If you have questions or want a list of contacts, please let me know. May the grace and peace of God be with you this day.